Hey everybody, I'm John Miller, ESA's Director of Membership and Communication, and in this session I'm going to give you a fairly quick and high-level overview of important networking tips and techniques. I know that one of the things that people most value about the ESA annual meeting is the opportunity to network, so we won't be getting the same kinds of chances to meet each other as we would in person, but there will be plenty of networking events that you can hit up, and of course I encourage you to network as much as you can throughout your career, uh, whether you're searching, you're in school, whatever have you, and beyond. You know, you can be networking through all different parts of life. It's a great way to meet people, if nothing else, and it can make a really big positive impact on your career journey. So the single most important thing, excuse me a second, we're trying to move my video out, there we go. The single most important thing that I think that people need to remember about networking is at the end of the day, it's really all about relationships. And that the job prospects of all types often come down to those relationships that you've built with people through networking. And I mean, it's certainly possible to get jobs without the support of friends or colleagues, but it is much harder. You know, at the very basic things, who else can provide references for you than the people who know you, right? But beyond that, though, it's not just about references. It's, you know, all these contacts of people that you can refer to or refer you to, you know, new opportunities for jobs. They can introduce you to other people who can refer you to new opportunities. They can be your future collaborator or your supervisor, or they can be people who you help to connect with things, you know. And the truth is that everybody you know can be considered a contact in your network as far as career stuff goes. You know, it's not just, you know, your former employer and fellow coworkers, it's your parents and your teachers and your coaches and your friends and your neighbors and your siblings and your clergy and your DoorDash drivers. You know, if you meet people and you get to know them, they're people who you should consider to be part of your network one way or another. Obviously, there are different, there are shades of depth in some of those relationships, but any one of them can be beneficial in a different way. You know, so not everybody's going to be appropriate as a reference per se for you know, school or a job or something like that, but they can all be people who can connect you to something, whether it's a new opportunity, another person, and it works both ways. So with that, so with all that in mind, it obviously behooves you to get to know people, right? That's obviously a lot easier for some people than others. You know, I am personally a dedicated, lifelong introvert, so I know the pain of talking to a stranger about almost anything, let alone making myself vulnerable by talking about like my skills and my goals with somebody I've never met before. But you know, what's interesting is that I'm actually really, really good at networking because I've learned some important skills over time, and those skills really can apply to anybody. You know, and you know, I have additionally like learned sort of how to manage my introversion and that like how my personality can actually be a benefit when it comes to networking, and some things that are good for people like me in particular. Also pertain in like a virtual realm as well. So we'll take a look at some of that stuff, especially because we're going to be doing all virtual networking in this annual meeting. Now, I said right here at the beginning that the most important thing to remember about networking is that it is about relationships, and that is true. But the next most important thing to remember about networking is that you can only get good at it by doing it. So I expect to see you in our networking events that are going on throughout the week, and where you're trying out some new techniques and trying out some of these tips that I'm going to give you. You know, and if you're nervous about it, you know, it's okay. The most important thing is that you're willing to put yourself out there. People in general are pretty nice, actually, and they're pleased to make new acquaintances. They're pleased to make people who might be good friends. And if you're in a networking environment, you know, the likelihood that people are going to be positive about meeting new people is almost 100% assured. Everybody at a networking event is there to meet people. You know, everybody understands it might be a little bit awkward. It might feel awkward for you at first too, but ultimately, you know, it will get better as soon as you start. You will feel better about it, and the rewards are going to be pretty great. So just put yourself out there. Now, some general tips that are going to be helpful for you as you network. And one of the most important ones is that you really should always be networking. It's a good rule of thumb. This doesn't mean that you have to always be like active and like, you know, on quote unquote in full networking mode, that would be not only exhausting to manage for yourself, but obnoxious to other people. Nobody really likes a person who's like that. But if you just do all the little things that make networking effective, and you sort of build them into how you interact with people, and are mindful of the fact that as you build relationships with people, it's, relationships are multifaceted, then you'll be better at doing this kind of stuff when you're actually in like a formal networking environment, and you'll be able to build a bigger, more genuine, and more effective network for having made the effort to do all of that. So what does it mean? That means that you share your business card, or at the very least your email address, like every time you meet somebody new in your field, right? It means whether you've done that with a person, or even if you haven't, it means connecting with them on LinkedIn, or I'm active in some Slack groups, and that's actually a good opportunity to network with people because you all have something in common to talk about. It means reaching out after you have met a person, to touch base. Maybe it's just to say hello. It was great to meet you. Thank you so much for that conversation. Or you can follow up on what it was you were talking about. Hey, I just wanted to share that article that I mentioned. It's really interesting. That way you can continue to have a conversation. What none of this doesn't, or what none of this actually means, though, what it doesn't mean is that when you're doing networking or networking-like activities, you shouldn't be doing it just because you need something right now. Like that is, it's really transparent and it's off-putting. I once went to a networking event here in DC. Well, not only was I actively looking for work, but I was actually unemployed at the time, and I feel like. I felt in the room, and I still remember that feeling that everybody just knew that I was desperate, and there was really nothing sincere about my interactions with them, because I was basically fishing for job opportunities. And yeah, honestly, I was, and it's sometimes. It's like seductive almost to be able to do that. Hey, everybody's here to talk about job opportunities. I'm going to go there. I'm going to do that. But here's the thing. Unless you run into that person who's just, frankly, feeling really generous, it's not going to come across good. It really isn't. So what you should do is, instead of like opportunistically pouncing on networking events when you most need them, what you should be doing is always network. Always building relationships, so that way when you do need something, there are actual people to go to and have a sincere conversation about. And because you build a good relationship with them, it can work off. So with that in mind, I segue immediately into the next point, which is to always be genuine in your interactions with people. This can mean a few different things, but ultimately it all boils down to just a genuine honesty in how you interact with other people. Everybody who's ever been to a networking event knows that that person who comes in and just kind of aimlessly works the room, and they're shaking everybody's hand. Hey, good to see you. Hey, Dave Porter. I have no idea who Dave Porter is. Hey, Dave Porter, great to meet you. And they're just relentlessly passing out their business cards without so much as, even simple making eye contact with anybody. And they're not trying to talk to anybody. They're just trying to basically explode into the room and overwhelm it with their own force of personality. Everybody knows that person is a jerk. They're only in there for themselves. They are, and as a result, like nobody really takes them all that seriously, right? But you, on the other hand, you've come in and you've pleasantly shaken hands with a few people, and you've politely introduced yourself. You have actively listened to what they had to say, and you ask them intelligent questions about those things that they say, and you follow up. And if you check out my presentation on job interviews, you'll see that a lot of these stuff is actually really similar. But in general, you're there and you're showing a real, genuine interest in all the other people that are there and that you interact with. And as a result, you made a positive impression. And while, Dave Porter, how you doing, may have made 100 contacts in the span of an hour just by hustling around the room, not a single one of them is really a contact. But you talked to 5 or 6 people, every one of whom you left a positive impact on, and you're going to follow up with them. And now you actually done something for yourself and for them. It's great that way. This kind of also feeds into this notion of, you always need to be professional when you're networking. And exactly what professional means to anybody at any given time is fairly fluid. I will allow that. But I think we all understand that there's like some rudimentary notions of what professionalism is, right? It means that you're approaching your interactions with other people with a certain amount of respectfulness, certain amount of humility, that you're open to them and to listen to them and to hear them and to not just be throwing yourself and your personality and your perspective out there, but you're trying to share space and time with each other, right? Even though you might never work with these people, you want them to feel that you're professional, you're reliable, you're sensible. You can still joke around about people without being disrespectful or saying inappropriate things. I like to think of myself as actually being a very professional person, although on paper, I'm often, not that professional guy. I can't think of the last time I wore a suit to work. I'm constantly joking around. For me, the most important thing most professional thing a person can do in a workplace is follow through on their on the things that they said they would do. For me, like, that's a big thing about professionalism, and so that's the kind of thing that I look for in people, right? Is whether they seem like reliable, whether they seem steady. So that's what I'm getting at. But at the same time, if I'm just getting to know a person for the first time, what I'm going to do though is kind of hedge my bets, and I'm not going to just be myself completely in that. I'm going to try to be, a little bit extra polite, maybe a little bit extra mindful. I might not share that I think a particular observation of mine is kind of humorous, because not everybody might get that, and that's okay. Like I said, you don't have to be on. You can play along to a certain extent, Other things just to be mindful of is like if you're at a public reception and they're serving alcohol, like we often serve alcohol at receptions at ESA meetings, keep your consumption to a minimum. There's food, don't overeat. In general, be, neat and tidy. If you have to wait in line for something, whether it's a restroom or whatever have you, be patient. Be respectful of other people's space, stuff like that. Don't constantly be checking your phone. It makes you look impatient. The little things that you would normally do just to show respect are like around the office or with your friends. Those things apply when you're networking. So, just kind of think of it the same way. Now, when you are talking with people though, what you should do is actively engage. And this is the kind of thing that I was talking about before. When I mentioned that the interviewing and networking are actually really similar in a lot of ways. So if I'm in person and I meet you, I'm going to shake your hand, I'm going to make eye contact, I'm going to smile, I'm going to exchange pleasantries. Hey, nice to meet you, Dave Porter. Sorry, I've just now repeated his name, so like I actually will be easier for me to remember later. In fact, I will never forget Dave Porter because he was such a whirlwind when he came into the room. But it's just those little things, and that's exactly the same thing when you come into an interview, right? You come in, you shake hands, you're very pleasant, you exchange niceties, and it's just basics, social etiquette. But these things actually really, really matter, because then when you're talking with a person, right, you want to practice like active listening kind of stuff. I don't know, like I'm assuming that you're somewhat familiar with that term, but active listening means not just staring at a person when they're talking. It means, doing the physical signs of interest in what someone is talking about. So, you'd be like, lean in a little bit, you tilt your head, your facial expressions kind of line up. You have little reactions to the things that they say. You nod along. Interesting. You ask follow-up questions. Dave Porter, why are you such a rambunctious fella? Stuff like that, because it shows that you're actually engaged. And it's interesting about active listening is it's impossible to not be engaged if you're doing it because you're actually actively paying so much more attention. And it's a choice that you make, but it's an effective one, and it really goes far in building those relationships with people, and the transfer of information between people works so much better if you're both like actively listening that way. I really recommend looking up stuff on it, and even some like how-to videos, because it's such a good technique. If you are in an all virtual experience though, one thing that's good to do is, even though you're not in a room with anybody, act as if you're speaking to an entire room of people at once, because in fact, that's actually kind of what you're doing, right? from like a decorum perspective, you know, you say you please and you thank and thank you, you know, when people talk or you get a chance to talk, you know, you practice active listening anyway. You do things like look directly at the camera rather than like off into space, because you're paying attention to the people in front of you, right? Sorry, excuse me. And then when you do have a chance to talk, you know, don't take up all the time. That it's not about you. You know, you want to make it that you want to make it clear to everybody else, and you're going to make a great impression by doing so, by making it clear that you're there to learn. You know, it's about people and their work and their interests, and that stuff matters. And they all matter more than the details about yourself, which seems paradoxical, because shouldn't you all be on equal footing? You are. But here's the thing. If you're in a good networking group, everybody's going to be understanding that that's how it goes. So everybody's going to take about the same amount of time. Everybody's going to use about the same number of words, because you're all there for the same reason, right? And it's actually pretty awesome when everybody's on the same page like that. If you do need to influence a room, or if you need to kind of get some stuff out there, one great technique, and it seems so simple, but it's just ask a lot of questions and then keep following up on the answers to those questions. It's like social Socratic method. So like as an example for that, I was recently at a networking event for people in like my general line of work, and I realized really quickly that I was by far the newest person in the room. Like almost everybody there seemed to know, not everybody else, at least a few other people. And the ones who didn't know each other didn't know of each other. Meanwhile, there I am, a stranger, right? But I was determined to get to know who these people were, and I wanted to make a really good impression. So when the time came for me to introduce myself, it was kind of toward the end of the group. And as soon as I finished up, I went right back to one of the people who had gone before me, and who had said, you know, this is what I do and where I work. And I started asking them questions. I said, well, what's that? What's your company like? What's that work like? You know, what are some of the challenges that you are facing right now? Wow, cool, that's really impressive. Where do you see that particular thing going? And before long, I was actually like the most engaging person in the room, because I was asking other people questions about themselves, you know, and which made them then interested. Who is this guy? And they wanted to know about me. So that's just a really good way to get people, you know, kind of going with you on this. But with all that, what you want to do is that, you know, I keep saying this stuff is a two-way street, and it really is. You have to be as willing to help others as you are to accept their help. You know, good networking means that you are a good contact. You're not just collecting them, you are being one. If you hear that somebody's looking for a job, offer to forward their resume around, right? Invite folks out to happy hour with your coworkers. Likewise, see if you can't get invited to come to some things and meet new people. That a colleague of yours just published a new paper. If that's true, send a link out to your network and say, you know, I'm really excited about my friend's new paper. This is really cool work. I thought you all might enjoy it. Now you've just exposed them to however many other people. It's those little things that build networks, and people are so much more likely to reciprocate when you need support if you've been doing that, you know, for others the entire time. And it's a big reputation builder. I don't know if anybody plays role-playing games at all, but you know, you understand that, you know, how reputation can really impact your success in these things. Real life is the same way. They didn't make that up for RPGs. So be mindful of how you can enhance your own reputation and what some of those important things are. So important, though, when it comes to talking about yourself and in really any situation, is the elevator pitch. And the concept for these is very, very simple. It's making a personal statement about yourself, your career, your goals, whatever have you, that takes no more time to say than it would take to ride in an elevator a few floors with another person. I swear this must have come along from like those scenes in the movie where the intrepid young protagonist goes chasing after the big shot and slides in the elevator just as the door closes, and then knows they have about 15 seconds to say what they have to say. And then, you know, the next cut is to the script, is to the elevator door opening, and the big shot is walking out, you know, looking thoughtful or whatever. And when you finally get back to the focus being on your protagonist, they're all like, yeah, I did it. That's exactly what an elevator pitch is. And I'm not kidding. They can be as short as 10, 15 seconds. 30 seconds, frankly, is, I think most people are willing to tolerate a 30-second elevator pitch, but it's really what you want to do. It's a short, succinct pitch about yourself. You want to make yourself sound good. And working on an elevator pitch is actually beneficial in a lot of ways, because not only will you get good at expressing yourself succinctly like that, but you'll get by working through the process of making it short and like to the point, you'll get a good clear vision of what it is that you're actually really all about. And then you'll have a very ready tool in your box anytime anybody really is like looking for that kind of definitional thing about yourself or your work. And then plus, when you introduce yourself to new people, you have a speech all ready to go that you basically have memorized. You can get out without rambling. Especially when you're nervous, right? And you're out there and you're like, and your palms are sweaty and you don't know what to do and you're shaking hand. You gotta even have like a little bit like the shakes, right? Like that happens to me. I'll shake a little bit, but you know what? I can say almost anything I want because I have practiced these things, and it just you come across so much better than if you look like a nervous wreck. I think a lot of people are willing to give folks benefit of the doubt. Everybody's been nervous before in a room, but it's just so much more effective right then in the moment if you're coming across as at the very least confident in what you have to say. You might still depict a little bit of nervousness, but that's fine. You spoke well. And I really can't reiterate enough how good elevator pitches are and how useful they are as tools. So I'm just encourage you to go look up the links for this session and the resources on the Career Central pages for the meeting and on the ESA website eventually to find some more stuff on elevator pitches. Work on it, do it. Another general thing that's really helpful for it, like if you're in that virtual world, is how to sort of manage yourself from like that etiquette standpoint. I already touched on it a little bit, but I just want to flesh it out a little bit more because I want to have a special note for my introvert friends, and I'm running out of time. But at the end of the day, a virtual networking event really isn't all that different from an in-person one. But what you miss out on are the little social cues, the nonverbal stuff that people employ, like when they're in groups and when they're talking with each other, especially when they're new. You can usually tell when it's okay to talk when you're with people in the same room, but that stuff is hard to communicate through cameras, and not necessarily always in 100% real time. There's like a little bit of lag. So rather than everything just being a great big mess, there are some things that you can do to contribute to a general order and sense of stability in these meetings. One is, wait your turn to speak. If there's a hand raising thing and there's a moderator and they say, please use the hand raising thing, use it. Don't speak over others. And if you inadvertently do so, apologize and then let them go. Oh, please, I'm so sorry. I was going to use a thing here in my outline that actually I think is really applicable. And does everybody know what the concept of Midwestern nice is? Because that's exactly how you need to be here. Oh, so sorry, so sorry, after you. To a fault. Do it to the point where it's driving people crazy, but at the very least, nobody can say that you were interrupting everybody else, right? You're taking other people seriously. Make sure that your camera is on the entire time and that your eyes are facing that camera. There's an exception to that rule, like, oh, I'm going to check this other screen real quick for this thing that I want to share with you all. Nobody minds if you do that, but right now, this white dot on my computer is every other person, right? And if I'm trying to talk to those other people, I need to be talking to those people. And if I'm listening to those people, I need to be listening to those people. So always face the camera and always engage as if those people on the screen are real. If for some reason you do need to briefly disengage, mute yourself. You can also turn your camera on and off, but it might not be necessary. But for instance, if I have to sneeze very loudly, or following like another range, if my partner comes into the room and has to ask me a question while I'm in a meeting or something like that, and nobody really minds if that happens. I get it. We're all at home right now, but I can do everybody the courtesy of muting myself for a second while that happens, that kind of thing. And then it also helps to know like how to really use the program, use it wisely. We're using Zoom, so the chat box is such an awesome tool for sharing stuff. So is like being able to do screen sharing, and if you're able to, if you're in a group of people and everybody's able to share the screen at different times, it's a really awesome tool to have, because then you can talk about things more actively, right? It's like I could show it to you in person, but here's a way I can show it to you virtually. Document uploads, polling, all those little tools can just help to make your interaction so much more engaging for everybody. And that's why I encourage people that if you're going to be using a platform in like any capacity, but particularly for like networking stuff, is understand how to use it and see if you can't use some of those capabilities to have better interactions. Frankly, that's basically it in general. I mean, I recommend looking up other resources on networking, whether it's on our Career Central content or just Googling around on your own. But get a chance, look it up. And it helps, I'm giving you general advice, but there are networking resources for educators and scientists and, really any field out there, because they're always nuances to them. And, getting some targeted advice that way is also a good idea. But I did mention I wanted to include a few things for my fellow introverts. I get the feeling, I'm not trying to stereotype STEM folks, but I'm just, I've met a few of you in my days here at the ESA, so I just want to say to you that networking, I understand, can be a unique challenge. It used to be terrifying to me. To this day, I don't relish it, but though I am good at it. So I just wanted to include some things that I think would be particularly helpful for you, because networking, quote unquote, is made not for us. But some things that you can keep in mind that might make it more successful for you. One of those things is to manage your energy, right? Networking is an exhausting activity. I lead webinars and conference calls and other kinds of stuff all week, every week, as part of my job. And then I'm always in meetings. In person used to be, now they're all virtual. It used to be a blend, obviously. And if we were all together in Salt Lake City, I would be standing in front of you right now, and I'd be making this presentation in person, and you'd see me then dashing from event to event and meeting to meeting, and I'm always be talking with somebody. And to an outsider, I look like the world's most intense social butterfly, because that's how I try to present myself. I'm the membership director. My job is to be, engaging for the members. But during that time, I need breaks, and I have to take breaks. They can't be kind of breaks. I'm going to take a lunch that is an hour long, and I'm going to talk to another person that entire time. I might not even look at my phone. I might stare at the wall, or I might put my head down and just breathe a little bit, because I need to recharge. And that's the thing for introverts, right? You know what you need to do to recharge because of all the energy you have to expend to do the interpersonal stuff, especially with strangers. So just understand what it is that you need to do that well. Otherwise, you're going to get yourself stressed out and you might break down. And you want to be able to be on when you need to be on, right? Another thing to do is to set reasonable expectations when you're going into any kind of networking event. You know inside your head that nobody in that room is there actually going to try to eat you. But you should also understand that nobody probably is going to immediately try to be your best friend, right? If you've done this before, you understand that there will probably be an awkward interaction or two. What you have to understand is that's okay. And you have to expect that that's just something that's going to happen. What you also should expect is you're going to meet people who are just as eager to meet you as you are to meet them. And by setting those expectations in a reasonable way, it means you can meet those expectations more easily, which goes right hand in hand with manage your inner critic. We all have this part of our persona, right? The little bit of our ego. It's like our anti-ego. Whatever we do, it's always in there telling us that we're not smart enough, we're not good enough, we're not attractive enough, we're not charismatic enough, whatever have you. This absolute jerk part of our personality loves to take over when we're most uncomfortable. So the thing you have to do is you have to actually proactively stop that from happening. And one of the ways you can do that is by having those reasonable expectations, because as you meet your expectations, Maybe an example that I wrote down here is like introducing yourself to a group of people that you never met before. You see, 3 or 4 people who about look like they could be your peers, right? You go up and you just say, they're talking with each other, but you just go up and say, "Hi, I'm John Miller. This is my first meeting. How are all of you? How are you enjoying the meeting?" That kind of thing. A minute later, you've had a positive social interaction. Everybody's feeling pretty good, and you basically just stomped that inner critic right to dust. And then you get a nice lift and a nice energy high out of that, and it helps you be more successful over the rest of the day. It's just those little things. If you have a negative interaction, you just need to say, because you set your expectations, I knew that was going to happen. We're going to have one. That's okay. Let's go talk to the next person. Maybe take a minute to go into the restroom and splash some water in your face just to kind of get like a little pick me up or something like that. But whatever it is you need to do, you just kind of need to keep that little annoying jerk inside of you quiet, at least until the event's over. One thing that's actually really helpful is that you can actually ask for help with introductions with people. And you'll feel silly the first time you do this. I always do, but now that I've kind of graduated into being the person who's on the other side of this, it's not that bad. But what you need to do is you go in when you're going to an event, or whatever environment or something, and you just kind of find a person who's sort of like that boss personality. They don't have to actually be the boss of the room, but if it's at the meeting, maybe it's a session organizer, or it's someone from the ESA staff, or it's a fellow or an award winner, or someone from the governing board or something like that. And just go up to that person and you say, "Hey, hello, how are you? I'm John. This is all really great. I'm really interested in getting to know more people who are doing this. Could you maybe, tell me who are the few of the people who are in here are good to talk to?" And, it's interesting because they might just say, go talk to, Osvaldo Sala over there. Osvaldo knows all about that stuff. Or they might even say, "Hey, you know what? Great to meet you. I'm going to take you over here and introduce you to my friend Laura Hunicke. We're going to have ourselves a conversation." And then they're introducing you to these other people, and it just makes it so much easier, right? Another thing that you can do, this kind of goes along with this, is I personally adopted my own boss personality years and years ago because, there are all kinds of people who are in the military, but it was good for me at the position that I was and the time that I was for me to be much more, I guess emphatic is the word that I'm looking for, much more active, because I was trying to rise, and I wanted to impress people. So I adopted a side of myself that really is the most engaged and outgoing person possible. That other people kind of gravitate toward. And if you can manage that for yourself, what I will do now is I'll go into these unfamiliar environments, and I try to find one person or maybe a couple people in the room who I either know something about, or maybe I know them a little bit or something like that. And I'll just go right up to them, and I will launch into an icebreaker the second that, that we're directly engaged with each other. It can be hit or miss, but you know what? By putting on that little bit of a mask, it's because I'm not myself. I'm just choosing to show a part of myself over other parts of it. I'm able to get myself more to that comfort zone where everybody's kind of on the same page, and it works wonders. So that's the thing that you can try as well. With that, I do want to say that you really should be mindful of your body language when you're talking with people, when you're networking. How many times have you, I know I've done it a bunch, enter a room full of people you don't know, you realize that you immediately walk to the furthest point in the room from the center where everybody else is, you cross your arms, and you just kind of blend in, right? I've done it way more times than I'm comfortable even admitting to, but looking back on it, I've always been doing myself a huge disservice by doing that, just because it feels kind of comfortable because you're safe that way. It's actually not the truth. On the off chance that there are other people in there who kind of know how you feel, somebody might come up and talk to you and say hello. but it's just as likely that anybody in that room who understands what you're going through at that moment doesn't want to talk to anybody. So nothing actually happens. But in reality, most of the people who are in there are, who observe you doing that, they might just think you're kind of weird, even creepy. And, you need to be mindful just to, like, what that looks like. And instead, even though it's hard, don't let yourself drift away, don't into the corner of the room. Instead, go talk to somebody, talk to a person, talk to that person who you think might be the one who feels like they may, maybe they get it, because you can help each other out, right? And then when you actually are engaging with people, you have to remember, maintain eye contact. Don't do that thing, we all do it, where you kind of talk past a person. Don't do it. Try to make eye contact, at least, with every time that you talk, not the whole time maybe, but definitely when you are talking. If you're like me and you get kind of fidgety, like in your hands and your legs, find a way to manage that. I'll carry like a pen, or sometimes even like a piece of paper, just something that I can play with, like subtly. I'm not, winging around like nunchucks or something like that, but I just want to have something that I can use to occupy my nervous energy while I'm in those interactions. Because if I can keep the rest of my body calm, then I feel calm, and that's another thing that can benefit me in some of that discomfort. And then really the last thing to remember, and I always want to tell people this, a networking period, but it's great for introverts, is that yes, this is a world where it always seems to play to extroverts, right? But everything that I've said before about listening and asking questions and politely ceding time to others, don't all those things sound like perfect things for introverts? It's completely true. A lot of this stuff is really, it really works for us. We just have to be mindful of the situation and know how to apply which things when, right? You can, in fact, get by in a lot of these social interactions by just actively listening the whole time. And you're comfortable listening, of course you are, but you don't have to put yourself out there as much. I mean, you do have to talk. You can't simply clam up the whole time. And you should, like, afterward, you should take the time to have some kind of follow-up with everybody. Remember what I said, always be networking. So follow up and continue to show like a genuine connection with people. But in a sense, an introvert's tendencies actually fit really, really well into the networking activity. So now that is largely the extent of this. If we were all in person, I'd break us up into groups and we'd do some activities where we try to practice some things and do some icebreakers and stuff like that. But because all we're doing is watching the recording, all I can say is to get out there, participate in the networking events at this meeting. I am available for asynchronous Q&A for the next several months. So if you watch this and you have some questions, feel free to ask. I'm always happy to help. Just as a couple final things before we completely wrap that up, I want you to check out the other sections that I've done here on resume development and interviewing. They're right there, they're part of Career Central, and they're just as general as this was, but hopefully they can be helpful for you. You can also talk with our early career ecologist section, which has a mentoring program that helps folks get into this. I know our student section actually has a mentoring event as part of the meeting every year as well. Those are things to check out. You can learn something about yourself, and maybe continue to grow in your comfort with when it comes to networking. And then always, you have friends and you have colleagues now. You can practice this stuff with them. It might seem like kind of weird, but you can basically rehearse conversations is the big thing. Rehearse your elevator pitch. Rehearse just how you say hello to a person, and how you meet somebody for the first time. And by doing it a little bit, and then by really sort of being each other's accompaniment, when you go into some situations, that's another great way to feel more comfortable, because someone has your back. I cannot emphasize enough how much practice will help with this. Like I said at the beginning, networking, you can only get good at it by doing it. So do it as much as you can. Best of luck to you all. I hope you enjoy the meeting, and stick with us with ESA. It's great to have you.